The economic crisis in Sri Lanka worsens day by day. In the latest, the country today announced that it is defaulting on its all external debt worth $51 billion. Sri Lanka called the move a last resort after running out of foreign exchange to import essential goods like food and fuel. The country's finance ministry said in a statement that creditors, including foreign government, were free to recapitalize any interest payments or opt for payback in Sri Lankan rupees. The finance minister said that this decision was an emergency measure taken purely to prevent the country's economic crisis from worsening further. Estimates show that Sri Lanka needed $7 billion to service the debt this year, but only had $1.9 billion in reserves at the end of March. Sri Lanka is grappling with its worst economic downturn since independence. Regular blackouts and acute shortages of food and fuel has caused widespread misery and prompted weeks of anti-government protests across the country. Meanwhile, 11,000 metric tons of rice from India reached Sri Lanka today. So far, New Delhi has sent 16,000 metric tons to Colombo under India's multi-pronged support to Sri Lanka. Our correspondent Dasunia Thauda has been tracking the Sri Lankan crisis closely and has sent us this report from Colombo with the latest. Watch.
Even as the Central Bank of Sri Lanka today notified of its intention to not pay any foreign debt until further notice and to look into possibilities of debt servicing here in Sri Lanka, protesters still continue to gather in their thousands here near the presidential secretariat, as you can see right behind me, with the pure intention of letting people know that they still do want the Rajapaksa-led government to step down, and none of the decisions that were made as of recent is good enough for the people of Sri Lanka. Reporting for WION World is one from Colombo. I'm Dasunia Thauda.
Let's talk more about this. We are being joined by Dr. Wirakun A. Wijewardena, a career central banker who has served as the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us at this hour. To deal with the exploding financial crisis, the Sri Lankan Finance Ministry has said that the country has suspended foreign debt repayments and also has defaulted on its $51 billion external debt. The government has called the move a last resort. How feasible and significant is this step on debt restructuring?
The latest action by the Sri Lanka government is the suspension of the foreign debt repayment falling on after 5 p.m. Sri Lanka time on the 12th of April 2022, and these foreign debt repayments include the international sovereign bonds which the Sri Lanka government has issued, the foreign debt borrowed by the government of Sri Lanka from bilateral sources like India, Japan, ADB, South Korea, European Union, UK, USA, Australia, and all the countries, and also all the deferred trade credit. Deferred trade credit means any amount which Sri Lanka government owes to the Asian Clearing Union, of which there are 10 members, including Sri Lanka. There had been an amount which had to be paid by the government of Sri Lanka, but it had been deferred, and that particular those loans are also covered, plus the borrowings by the Sri Lanka government agencies on a guarantee from the government of Sri Lanka. Now, this is a very wide definition of foreign borrowings by the government of Sri Lanka, and what has been excluded is only the soft facilities which the central bank has got from the friendly central bank. Other than that, all other foreign debt repayments will be suspended. Number one, they will be added to the principal amount, which we call capitalization of the installments. Number two, number three, an option has been given to the creditors to get paid in Sri Lanka rupees if they apply for the same facility within 1 month of the suspension. Now, these are the three conditions of the loan suspension. It has been done unilaterally without getting the consensus of the creditors. So therefore, in my view, it amounts to a default, but a default which is going to be made with the concurrence of, I think, the International Monetary Fund, because the Sri Lanka government is presently negotiating with the International Monetary Fund for a loan facility. At the same time, Sri Lanka's central bank has called for proposals for the appointment of legal advisors and the financial advisors for restructuring its debt. So what would happen is that once these things come into place, the negotiation will take place on the basis of the capitalized principal amount, which the suspension has, created now.
Right, Doctor, like you mentioned, the decision has been unilateral, which means it was taken without a consent from creditors. How can a borrower, in this case Sri Lanka, take this decision? And will the countries in question agree?
There is no any choice for Sri Lanka today, because Sri Lanka's foreign reserves have fallen to the bare minimum level. And I don't know to disclose the number, but I will have to say it is actually a critically very low level. And as a result, Sri Lanka is not in a position to honor its debt obligations. So as a result, it has been done unilaterally, and unilaterally there is no any provision in the original loan agreements that either party, either borrower or the lender, can unilaterally suspend the payments. So therefore, this is not permitted in terms of the loan agreements which Sri Lanka has signed.
Well, how much of a problem is debt servicing, and to what extent can it be solved given the current crisis?
If we take the full year starting from, say, April, amount involved is about, say, $4.5 billion US. That is the amount involved, but because this doesn't apply to the loans borrowed by the private sector in Sri Lanka, it's only the government sector. But you will realize the fact that even the private companies which have borrowed money from outside, they are not in a position to honor the debt obligation because there is no foreign exchange available in the market. So as a result, there can be the second one will be the private debt default, which is inevitable and which will follow the government's debt suspension of the debt repayment.
Thank you, the former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, for talking to us. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.